Hello everyone. As we speak, the entire might of the Indian Armed Forces is deployed to fight an unseen and unknown enemy, a virus that has killed more Indians than all the wars we have fought. The Indian Air Force is flying its entire transport fleet day and night to transport cryogenic containers. The Indian Navy's warships deployed to protect India's waters are right now moving at record speed to get back critical oxygen supplies from the Middle East. The Army, stretched to the brink, has deployed its doctors to man non-Army COVID hospitals. This is a national effort underway with the forces using their logistical muscle to mobilize resources from every corner of the world. Debrief today is about our forces, about men and women who say they are honored to serve the nation in these unprecedented times. On the show today, hear from them. An Indian Air Force pilot who flew 12 hours straight to get back critical oxygen to India, oxygen containers to India. An army doctor who has no time to sleep, and a naval warship captain speeding to India's shores carrying back the very critical oxygen. The Indian Navy has deployed 9 frontline ships to ensure a steady supply of oxygen to India via the seas. Oxygen that doctors say is their most potent weapon to fight COVID. India's warships, 9 of them, are racing against time to bring back critical medical supplies to India's shores. The first to arrive, INS Talwar from Bahrain. It carried with it 54 metric tons of liquid oxygen, the most potent weapon right now in India's fight against COVID-19. Seen here disembarking its precious cargo in New Mangalore, the ship made the journey in record time and has sailed once again to the Middle East to pick up more supplies. The Navy is calling it Operation Samudra Setu 2 and has deployed its frontline assets across the Indian Ocean region. INS Kolkata, that was deployed in the Persian Gulf, is on its way from Kuwait, carrying back 400 oxygen cylinders and 2 27-ton oxygen tanks. INS Jalashwa, that played a starring role in repatriating Indians home last year, is deployed in the Indian Ocean region, standing by to embark medical supplies at a short notice. A nation is depending on its navy for its very breath. The force says it will not breathe easy till the crisis has eased. Captain Partha Bhatt, the commanding officer of INS Talwar, has just reached Indian shores and is already readying for his next mission. Captain Bhatt, congratulations for the completion of your successful mission. We know that this will continue till as long as India is not out of the woods. You're joining us from on board your ship. Thank you very much. Can I first ask you what your brief was? And as you sailed, was there a sense that this is possibly the most urgent mission of your life? Because in this mission, every minute counted.
Well, as you know, that there's been a sudden surge in the COVID-19 cases in the country, and these are extremely challenging times. So in support of the national cause and the national effort to fight the COVID-19, the Indian Navy has launched Operation Samudra Setu 2, and it is in keeping with our motto, nation first always. So considering the shortage of supply of oxygen being faced, it was very important that our ships quickly get this to our country. Operation Samudra Setu 2 is aimed towards this, and presently there are many of our warships which are bringing back critical medical equipment and oxygen from various countries across the Indian Ocean region. On 30th April, INS Talwar embarked 40 metric tons of oxygen given to us by the Kingdom of Bahrain, and we set sail on the 1st and have reached Mangalore on 5th of May, covering a total distance of over 1400 nautical miles. Here we have handed over the oxygen to the local civil administration
Okay.
so that they can distribute it further where it's required.
Okay. Was there an urgency that we have to get back as soon as possible?
Yes, definitely. You see, the men on board our ship have come across from the length and breadth of the country, and everyone is aware of what the country is going through. So there was this sense of urgency that our people, our men, and our countrymen required us to get back this oxygen at the earliest. And that's why there was that certain sense of urgency which drove us and pushed us to make sure that we could get back in the earliest possible time.
Captain Bhatt, you command a warship. INS Talwar is a warship. Was it equipped to carry these massive oxygen cylinders that were filled with 54 metric tons of oxygen? Was it even safe?
Well, as you are aware that naval ships are quite versatile in nature, and these platforms are actually the platforms of choice for carrying out humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. And we have the intrinsic flexibility to change our roles from military to benign and vice versa very quickly. Since the Navy had already launched Operation Samudra Setu, we were well prepared. INS Talwar was mission deployed in an area which was close to from where we had to pick up the containers, and we were quickly diverted there. When we reached Bahrain, we realized that we had to make certain minor modifications on board our ship to board these containers. And once these were loaded, we made sure we came back at the earliest.
Captain Bhatt, the pandemic is all around us. Probably your family is impacted, the families of your men on board are impacted as well. Does that tell on the morale of the ship?
As uniformed people, we actually live up and look forward to such challenges where we can be of assistance to our countrymen. Like I said earlier, the men on board the ship come from across the entire length and breadth of this country. A lot of them have their friends from near and dear relatives who have gone through difficult times, and they all realized the importance of getting this oxygen back to the country in time.
And finally, Captain Bhatt, before I let you go, because I know you have a packed schedule, you need to go back to the seas to carry back oxygen from other friendly nations. Anything you'd want to tell the country, anything you'd want to tell our viewers watching Debrief?
Well, I'll only say this much, that the Indian Navy will do whatever it takes to ensure that the steady supply of oxygen across the seas continues. We consider it an honor to be part of the national effort and to contribute it by bringing home this critical oxygen supply. And let a word about the men on board. The mood of the men on board is upbeat and full of pride and joy that we have been able to help our people. And INS Talwar is looking forward to many such more missions in the future.
We are depending on you, Captain Bhatt. Fair winds and following winds to you and to your ship. Thank you very much for being on the show today. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary responses. The Indian Army, for the first time ever, has opened up its hospitals to civilians wherever it is possible and is recalling all doctors and nursing staff who have retired within the last 2 years. This as India reels under a severe shortage of doctors and nurses and paramedics. Lieutenant General Madhuri Kantikar, Deputy Chief Integrative Defence Staff, joining me on the show today. Dr. Lieutenant General Madhuri Kantikar, thank you very much for being on the show today with us. Ma'am, the armed forces have been inoculated. This is my first question to you. We'll come to the logistics of what the army is trying to organize later. But the armed forces have been inoculated almost 100%. What has the experience been with infections and severity post-vaccination for serving troops?
Firstly, hi Shreya, and thank you for having me on CNN 18. It's a pleasure. I We can't have a better response than that has been seen with the fantastic immunization drive undertaken by the armed forces. Firstly, we are grateful to the nation that all our frontline workers were offered immunization right at the start. And we took it up in on a war footing. Today, we are very proud to say that 98, 99% of all our troops have had their two vaccines and beyond 2 weeks and are completely vaccinated. And the results are here to show. We've had hardly any requirement of hospitalization for our personnel, serving personnel, and there has not been a single death among any of the serving troops. I think that speaks volume when we are going through such difficult times. So, this is something which will be very, very important to pursue. Another aspect that again proves how effective the vaccination was, whereas in our first phase or the first wave that came in, we had a lot of serving people who were sick. But this time in our hospitals as well, it's more the families because they were younger. They did not get the vaccines in the first phase, and they are the ones who are more sick than the serving personnel. So I
Doctor,
think two strong evidence.
Doctor, every time the nation is in trouble, we call out to our armed forces. We have called out to them yet again. How are you coping with the demands coming in from various state governments, given how stretched you yourself are?
It is the complete teamwork of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the medical services. It is a huge team which has come together, and it's a great leadership which drives us to stretch ourselves beyond all limits. So, what you correctly said, we are really stretched. I mean, even the medical services, firstly, we have a finite number. Operational preparedness and supporting our soldiers on the front lines becomes a priority. Then we have our own dependents who are and our serving personnel, which become our next priority. Over and above that, we've taken under our wings across all stations, all cities, all military stations. We've taken over the care of our veterans and their dependents. Normally, they would go to the empaneled hospitals under ECHS, but we are looking after them as well. So it has really stretched us. But the dictum in the armed forces is when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And this uniform, I think, just makes us tougher.
Ma'am, at the DRDO facility in Ahmedabad, you have deployed battlefield nursing assistants. Can you explain to our viewers what exactly this concept is and if it can be replicated in the civil world as well to tide over this massive shortage of medical staff that we are seeing?
I think this is an excellent idea that the country can emulate. We have our soldiers, our sailors, and our air warriors who are otherwise on the fighting front. But because during even a war scenario, a medical person may not be able to reach a person who gets wounded, and his first help may be by his own buddy. So every unit, we train them in first aid, in doing the field dressings, in basic assessment of a clinical condition, and those are called the battlefield nursing assistants. They are not medical personnel. They are actually soldiers, air warriors, naval sailors, and we've already picked them up and deployed. In fact, Ahmedabad presently has naval BFNAs. The hospital in Lucknow is looking at the Army BFNAs. The Air Force Air Warriors would also be deployed. So, this is how we are beefing up our manpower to give respite and stretch our nursing services beyond.
Ma'am, right now the nation is gasping for breath. Army hospitals as well have run critically short of oxygen. How are the forces dealing with this?
The army has offered its flats, what we call the BOMs, on which they are the trains on which tanks and large vehicles are transported. So those trains are have been offered, and they're running up and down taking those oxygen containers. In addition to that, army drivers have been spared to be able to be there to take those oxygen cylinders and tanks. Huge support has come in from the Air Force and the Navy. The Navy is transporting them in ships, including to our remote islands, the Lakshadweep, the Andaman Nicobars, and those little spread out places. They're also ferrying back patients to mainland. They're bringing in large consignments from foreign aid, which is coming in. The Air Force is doing the same. They're bringing in a lot of equipment, oxygen and concentrators, oxygen generation plants, which are being brought in from different countries. And once in the country, the Air Force planes are on standby to take them on multiple sorties across the country. So everyone is pitching in. In addition to that, own leadership in the medical services is procuring our large generation plants, and hopefully over this month we'll have slow plants which come in and which would be installed at our hospitals. So I think it's the sum of the whole will sort of finally land up where there'll be no one for gasping. So I want to reassure the nation, these are very difficult times. My heart goes out to everyone who's lost a dear or a near one, who's gasping for oxygen. But just hold on there, be brave. This tsunami will pass, this too shall pass, and we can put our heads up again and get a gasp of absolutely free amounts of oxygen.
Waiting for that moment, ma'am. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Madhuri Kantikar. An absolute honor having you on the show today. A big thank you to you and to your team for fighting this war on our behalf. Up next, we are meeting an Indian Air Force pilot who flew his C-17 for almost 24 hours non-stop to pick up critical supplies from Europe. Do stay with us. Welcome back. In the last 2 weeks or so, the Indian Air Force has clocked in 600 hours of flying, possibly more. That is the sort of flying you do in times of war. This is a war, ladies and gentlemen, a nation's war, a war where every sortie, every shipment, every effort counts more than ever before. The Indian Air Force, tasked with protecting India's skies, is on its most critical mission ever. It is flying its entire transport fleet non-stop within India and abroad to pick up cryogenic oxygen tankers, cylinders, medicines. Critical supplies that India is critically short of. After 35 hours on duty, the Indian Air Force's C-17 Globemaster here, landing in Chennai after collecting supplies from the United Kingdom. Its only halt in this long and grueling journey was in Egypt for refueling. The Indian Air Force has clocked in over 150 hours, flying to Singapore, Dubai, Bangkok, Frankfurt, airlifting 55 cryogenic containers and 900 oxygen cylinders. Within India, the Indian Air Force has transported empty cryogenic containers to places like Jamnagar, Ranchi and Bhubaneswar, where they are filled with liquid oxygen and then by road sent to where they are required. The number of hours clocked, more than 360. As the big boys like the C-17 and IL-76 continue the heavy lifting, there are smaller but equally important efforts like this underway as well. A Cheetal helicopter based in Siachen evacuating a 75-year-old man whose oxygen had slipped to worrying levels. A nation is at war. Every sortie, every shipment, every hospital bed, every effort counts. Group Captain A.K. Patnaik has just landed after his very long sortie. Almost 24 hours non-stop, flying to and back from the United Kingdom, carrying 450 oxygen cylinders. Before that, he had flown a similar SOS sortie to Singapore and Dubai. He's joining us on the show here. Group Captain Patnaik, thank you very much for being part of Debrief today. Sir, I understand, the last few days have been absolutely exhausting for you and your entire team. So thank you for sparing your time. We are living through a dark moment in our history. When you take to the skies for these SOS sorties, is there a sense that this probably is the most critical mission for you and the Indian Air Force till date?
I'm sure we are all aware as to how daunting a task this is against an unforeseen enemy. However, this is what we are trained for, and this is what the people, the organization, and the manpower has been trained to combat in a different scenario. The enemy is slightly different, being an unforeseen enemy, but however, our preparation, our focus, our mission preparedness, the mission objectives, the goal orientation, and the synchronization with other agencies remains exactly similar as if we are fighting any other enemy. So if we have those pillars of mission execution in our mind and we follow them zealously, I'm sure we can take on any different kind of enemy, even if it is an unforeseen enemy like the COVID.
Group Captain Patnaik, I remember a year ago you had flown your C-17 to Wuhan to bring back Indians from the epicenter of the virus. Did you ever imagine that a year down the line you would be flying a different kind of mission, this time to get oxygen to save your countrymen?
Yes, last year when we carried out this mission, it was again with the same mission effectiveness and zeal and enthusiasm that we carried out this mission. And this is an unprecedented scenario that has happened, but I'm sure that with the training and with the enthusiasm of the Indian Air Force, we can take on any mission that comes our way. So we are still as motivated, still fighting fit, and still as dedicated to counter this unseen enemy and unforeseen task that we have. The same way we did it last year, the same way we're going to do this year, and I'm sure we'll win this war against Corona in good time.
Sir, the pandemic has affected all our families, probably your family as well. When you pick up these massive empty oxygen containers or medicines or critical medical supplies, is there a sense of urgency that we need to do this quickly, we need to get back home quickly, because in this fight, every minute counts?
Oh yes, extremely. You hit the nail on the head. The most important factor in these missions since the last 10-15 days is time. Time is the most critical factor, and hence the entire Indian Air Force and the squadron is geared up to do things which they have been doing in a normal peacetime, in a normal day-to-day task, which takes about a month to plan or a couple of weeks to plan. We are doing it in a couple of days.
Sir, I understand that you're preparing for your next sortie and your next mission already. But before I let you go, anything you'd like to tell the country?
The Indian Air Force from the very outset has devoted all its assets, not only aerial, but also those on the ground, the personnel, the augmented manpower, to devote all the available assets in the fight against this pandemic. It is an important time for all of us to come together, work in a synchronized, cooperative manner, and work with zeal and enthusiasm and never lose hope. The Indian Air Force is sure, with the training that we have, the zeal that we have, the enthusiasm that we have, we will take on this enemy and beat it back into, and I'm sure we will win this war against Corona in good time.
With soldiers like you, I'm sure we will. Group Captain Patnaik, what can I even begin to say to you and your entire armed forces? So let me just say a simple thank you, and that when the country needs you, you're always there fighting our wars, whether it's external or internal. Thank you very much. With that, it's a wrap from me. Thanks very much for watching.